I ignored a small engine vibration for 6 months. And it almost cost me exactly $1,250. Let me take you back to the beginning, because I guarantee that right now millions of people are making the exact same mistake I made. At first, it was absolutely nothing. I was sitting at a red light on a Tuesday morning. The radio was turned down low and I felt it in the steering wheel. A vibration so faint I thought it was the road. It wasn't, just a faint, rhythmic pulse. The moment I tapped the gas pedal, it completely disappeared. The engine smoothed out, the revs climbed, and the car drove perfectly normal. I did what 90% of car owners do in that exact situation. I convinced myself it was a minor fluke. Maybe it was a bad batch of winter blend fuel. I turned the radio back up, merged onto the highway, and completely ignored it. Fast forward 6 months later, I am driving on the interstate, doing about 110 kilometers per hour. I press the gas pedal to pass a semi-truck, and the engine doesn't just hesitate, it violently jerks. The check engine light flashed 3 times, which is the universal signal for a severe engine misfire, and then stayed solid. Yellow. I managed to limp the car into my driveway, but the faint vibration I had felt 6 months ago was gone. In its place was an aggressive, terrifying shudder. The entire cabin was shaking. The exhaust smelled like raw, unburned fuel. The next morning, I drove it to a highly rated diagnostic center. The mechanic plugged in his scanner and handed me a clipboard that made my stomach drop. The diagnosis: severe carbon accumulation choking the upper engine, the estimate to tear down the top half of the motor, walnut blast the intake valves, and manually scrub the system clean. $1,250. Before I show you how I beat that $1,200 bill with a $4 secret, hit that subscribe button. I pay for every single product on this channel with my own money. If a cheap hack fails, it fails on camera. I didn't hand over my credit card to the mechanic. I decided to run a brutal 7-day test using a ridiculously cheap, heavily guarded chemical solution. The chemical I use isn't what you would normally expect. I will show you exactly what it is right after the test, but what happened on day 5 completely shattered everything I thought I knew about car maintenance. To understand why this test was so critical, you have to understand the invisible enemy. When your engine is brand new, fuel injectors spray a perfect mist, but over time, especially with short trips and stop-and-go traffic, unburned fuel vapors bake onto the hot metal inside your engine. It starts as a thin glaze. Months later, it turns into a rock-solid carbon crust. Your fuel hits this crust and absorbs into it like a sponge instead of mixing with the air. This causes a micro-misfire. That tiny misfire was the faint vibration I felt at that red light 6 months ago. By ignoring it, the engine computer dumped more fuel to compensate, creating even more carbon, a mechanical death spiral. I had suffocated my own engine. Before I started this test, I needed bulletproof baseline data. Metric 1, idle stability. The needle was erratic, jumping randomly between 600 and 850 revolutions per minute. Metric 2, highway fuel economy. The car was struggling to hit 10.5 kilometers per liter. Metric 3, throttle response. A terrifying 1-second delay between pressing the pedal and the engine revving up. These were the numbers of an engine on life support. I waited until the gas tank was almost empty, poured the entire mystery bottle directly into the tank, and added exactly 20 liters of standard fuel. The 7-day countdown began. Day 1, 24 hours in. I drove my standard 30-kilometer commute. The result? Absolutely nothing. Zero change. Most people quit right here, throw the bottle away, and hand their credit card to a repair shop. I didn't. Chemical breakdown takes time and heat. Day 2. Still no major physical difference in how the car drove. However, when I plugged in my scanner, the engine's computer was pulling back fuel by about 2%. The fuel economy had ticked up from 10.5 to 10.8 kilometers per liter. A tiny shift, but I noted it in my logbook. Day 3. I started the car early. The engine stumbled hard on startup, and then it settled smoother than it had in months. That stumble. That was the cleaner finally breaking loose, the first massive layer of carbon. The aggressive shaking was noticeably softer. The RPM needle was fluctuating in a much tighter range between 680 and 750. Day 4. This was the turning point. I took the car to the exact same highway on ramp where the engine had originally violently jerked. I pressed the accelerator hard. The terrifying 1-second delay was gone. The massive hesitation had been cut in half and the engine downshifted smoothly. The fuel economy average hit 11.4 kilometers per liter. The data was undeniable. This cheap liquid was fighting back. But day 5 completely blew my mind. It was a cold, crisp morning. Cold starts are the unforgiving test for a dirty engine because carbon deposits are rock solid. I pressed the start button. The engine fired instantly, and it was dead silent. I put my hands firmly on the steering wheel. Zero vibration. The RPM needle was locked at exactly 700 revolutions per minute, like it was painted onto the glass. I took it out for the test loop. The car felt hundreds of pounds lighter. The throttle was snappy. The heavy, sluggish feeling that had been building up for 6 months was completely eradicated. By the end of day 7, the final numbers were locked in. Idle RPM, locked at a perfect 700, throttle delay, completely eliminated. Fuel economy jumped from a baseline of 10.5 all the way to 12.6 kilometers per liter. A massive 20% improvement. The check engine light cleared itself. I did not need to pay $1,250. So, what was the secret liquid? $4. That's it. A single bottle sitting on a shelf that every mechanic walks past every single day. I specifically hunted down a bottle containing a high concentration of a chemical compound called polyetheramine, or P. Most cheap fuel additives use basic alcohol, which just burns up instantly and does nothing to baked on carbon. P is entirely different. It is a highly engineered, heat-resistant detergent. It survives the extreme heat of the combustion chamber to physically melt and dissolve rock-hard carbon deposits out the exhaust pipe while the engine is running. Mechanics know exactly what P is, but nobody tells you to buy a $4 bottle when your car starts vibrating because nobody gets to charge you for 3 hours of diagnostic labor. The industry relies on your fear. The $4 liquid is a mechanical lifesaver, but my ignorance was the real villain. The liquid fixed the symptom, but my negligence caused the disease. Don't ignore the small changes in your car. When your engine feels heavier, louder, or rougher than it did a year ago, it is trying to tell you something. Listen to it. 6 months of ignoring a $4 problem almost cost me $1,250. Don't make the exact same mistake I made. Drop the word works in the comments if you have experienced this exact problem, or drop scam if you think I am wrong. I am pinning the best comment. See you in the next test.